Hey, read through the word. Today is August 30th. Today's lesson is called The Good Shepherd. We are in Ezekiel chapter 34 and verses 20 through 24. So let's read that. It says, "Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. I will surely judge between the fat sheep and the scrawny sheep. For you fat sheep pushed and butted and crowded my sick and hungry flock until you scattered them into distant lands. So I will rescue my flock, and they will no longer be abused, and I will judge between one animal of the flock and another, and I will set over them one shepherd, my servant David. He will feed them and be a shepherd to them. And I, the Lord, will be their God, and my servant David will be a prince among my people. I, the Lord, have spoken." Okay, so Ezekiel, all of chapter 34. So go back to verse 1 and read. So you have is a record of the bad shepherds over Israel. So as we have everybody's in exile, and how did we get to this point? Bad shepherds. Bad shepherds. And shepherds are the leaders that are over Israel. So basically, shepherds have been their kings or the priests in the temple, and they're serving their own interests, more idols in their hearts, instead of looking out for the people, which was their job. And what had happened is because where they're not going the right way, where there is no vision, the people perish. They are not taking them in the right direction. And the sheep follow their shepherds. And they even follow the bad shepherds into the wrong way, because none had led them in the right way. The people had fallen prey to their enemies. And God is promising to bring one shepherd over Israel. God says, I will rescue my flock. That he would care for his flock himself as the other shepherds should have done. And then it makes reference to my servant David. Now, this is, remember, with David, we had an eternal throne, eternal king, eternal kingdom, and it was all pointing to Jesus. And that's what he's talking about. That's what Ezekiel is saying, that about that Jesus is the good shepherd. And this whole discussion all through the Old Testament about a shepherd to lead the people, and it is that this is what the shepherd will look like, and we see it laid out before us really in Psalm 23, and we're going to see the same wording throughout Scripture. That's why we read the whole counsel of God. We don't just pick and choose, and we don't just proof text, which means we don't pull a verse out of context and make it say something that it doesn't say. There's plenty of people that do that, and it's wrong. It is looking at what God has said about himself, that he is who he says he is, and he does what he says he does. We believe that. Not that we believe in him. It's not believing in him. It's believing him. Now, I'm teaching a new class to my school this year. It's called Ethics. Very excited about that. It's like I tell my students that the practical application of a biblical worldview, that God himself informs our heart, mind, and soul, and then from that we make decisions. And so we're going to talk the big stuff this year. It's going to be, I get this class all year, and on top of that, you will not believe this, They painted a wall in my room with whiteboard paint. I can use the entire wall, and I did this week. It was everything. Now, the kids are outlining themselves on the wall, but I am like using it for notes. Very excited about that. And my head of school is gonna let me teach it on a Wednesday night. So I'm very excited about that. So very excited about that coming up. But it is this whole idea of looking at how God is our good shepherd and taking all of Scripture and looking at it and seeing what God has said. Now, see, Jesus fulfills all the things that a shepherd should be. Everything that's said about a shepherd and those fall away, Jesus is the good shepherd. And so it's not just an Old Testament thing. So, because we know Jesus says he is the good shepherd, but we see bad shepherds already in the New Testament. So if you go to John chapter 9, you have this whole story of the healing of the blind man. And it's the play on words there. And as an English teacher, I teach my students, this is why we understand the use of words. So we can understand when we look at Scripture. Last week, I had my students write papers on why, first week of school, and here's Miss Nance. Yes, please pick a parable and explain to me why God uses story and the power of using story and what that means. Not story make-believe, but plot diagram. Why do we learn that way? And so they were using all these different parables to write their papers with. And then I'm looking at this in John, and I think I've mentioned here that my pastor's preaching through the whole book, the book of John, in 18 months. That's what he's doing. And we are in John 10 right now. He just did the Good Shepherd last Sunday. And so this coming Sunday, we will continue. We go verse by verse. He's an expository pastor, and I am thankful for his preaching. And as we look at bad shepherds, they show up again here, and they're blind, not physically blind. So he heals a blind man to teach about them and tells them they're blind, and they get all up in it about it. They're mad. And it says, he tells it, oh goodness. It says in verse 40 and 41 of chapter 9, he says this, those of the Pharisees who were with him heard these things and said to him, we are not blind too, are we? And Jesus said, if you were blind, you would have no sin. But since you say, we see, your sin remains. Ouch. Bad shepherds. Here they are again, leading wrong. And then Jesus goes into chapter 10, and he talks about, I am the good shepherd. So if you go read John 10, 1 through 16. And that's what he says. He says in verse 14, I am the good shepherd, and I know my own, and my own know me. Even as the Father knows me, and I know the Father. And I lay down my life for the sheep. He's not using the sheep. He's there for the sheep. I have other sheep which are not of this fold. I must bring them also. That's us. That's the Gentiles. And they will hear my voice, and they will become one flock with one shepherd. So, so good. Okay. And so it is this idea of we were meant to have a shepherd, and all earthly shepherds are going to be bad ones. Jesus is the good shepherd, because bad shepherds lead people the wrong way. But the good shepherd is the way. Turn to John 14:6. And Jesus said to them, I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but through me. So, stop looking for bad shepherds. We have the good shepherd. God promised him, and he has come. His name is Jesus. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word. you.